Welcome to Vulnerability Management and Remediation Fundamentals. Today we're going to discuss some key stakeholders. First, let's begin with the question. What is vulnerability management? What does that mean to you? Some define it as a process of identifying, evaluating, treating, and reporting security vulnerabilities. Others define it as a continuous use of specialized tools and workflows that proactively eliminate exploitable risks. Some may define vulnerability management as function or a team within cybersecurity operations. At Optiv, we believe vulnerability management is a life cycle that consists of processes for identifying, categorizing, prioritizing, and remediating vulnerabilities to improve the security posture of an organization. Regardless of your definition, the overarching goal here is to reduce risk. This begins with discover, where it is essential and required as we must know what assets exist within the environment, decide which of these are considered in scope, and determine who is responsible for maintaining their upkeep. Next, we move on to analyze and prioritize, where we must assess where to focus our attention. This could be upon the most critical assets to an organization, or assets with the most severe vulnerabilities, or with the most potential for exploitation, or when following our recommended best practice, a unique combination containing all of these factors. Next is remediate, which is often the most difficult step, as it requires researching and testing solutions, as well as reviewing and discussing these solutions along with concerns from stakeholders. For long-term success, we must avoid impacting business operations that may have been dependent upon the existing functionality that is vulnerable. Implementation of the solution may require approving formal changes or tracking any exceptions to temporarily delay remediation. Last, we validate that remediation and/or mitigation has successfully addressed the threat while avoiding the creation of a new issue. Ample time must be given to stakeholders so that they may raise any valid concerns regarding efforts completed. Reporting is often considered a separate phase, but we believe communication between stakeholders should happen throughout the process to reduce the occurrence and minimize impact from potential issues. You may be saying to yourself, I do this now with my current security team, or I already have a team dedicated to performing vulnerability management. That's great, but let me ask, do you have a VM team? Or do you have a full program built around vulnerability management? Let's ask another question. Is there a difference between remediation and mitigation? The answer is yes. Remediation is the act of remedying, stopping, or reversing damage from a threat or vulnerability. Mitigation is the process or result of making something less severe, dangerous, or damaging. Both mitigation and remediation may include security controls, process improvements, and policy enforcement. Easier way to think of this is remediation is considered a more permanent solution, while mitigation is often a temporary fix. There are many stakeholders involved with the various components, enablers, dependencies, and related disciplines surrounding vulnerability management and remediation. These stakeholders either provide input or receive output, but ultimately contribute to and benefit from the success of a vulnerability management program. Think of it like a play or movie. Within this story, vulnerability management is the star and remediation is a co-star. But without any of the supporting characters, such as asset management, patch management, threat intelligence, penetration testing, we would have a very boring and short-lived narrative. Over the next few slides, we will focus upon the supporting cast of stakeholders and partners who are overlooked, but contribute just as much, and at times more, to the overall success of vulnerability management programs. These roles are often filled by teams with competing priorities, while being supported by organizational leadership who may not recognize the value provided nor comprehend the impact when neglected. due to vacancies from staffing shortages. IT systems and service management may include teams responsible for system administration, providing and applying updates for firmware, software applications, and operating systems. May include various tools and technologies, such as the platforms, appliances, or agents utilized by the vulnerability management team. Network management, responsible for upkeep of network devices and/or services such as switches, routers, DNS, DHCP, IP address management, etc. These core components are critical to the success of the organization, as well as ensuring all assets are available for both scans and updates when required. Asset management maintains a list of known assets deployed in circulation, tracks assets approaching their end of life expectancy. This is important to ensure assets being used will continue receiving vendor updates and support. These lists of assets are often maintained within a configuration management database. Patch management is a team that often is researching, acquiring, testing, and applying vendor patches, hotfixes, and/or updates. Change and release management, responsible for planning, scheduling, tracking, moves, adds, changes, and deletes, requests within the various staging environments, such as development, test, QA, and quality assurance, or production. And then problem management. This is essential for tracking incidents and maintaining knowledge management for root cause analysis and lessons learned. Information technology. These are often teams responsible for baseline configuration management, image management, creating and maintaining hardened operating system and application secure baseline configurations. These are used as templates by other teams for quickly creating or deploying systems and applications with a minimum level of acceptable security consistently throughout an organization. Cloud engineering is designing, implementing, and configuring cloud computing resources with these secure baseline configurations. Cloud engineers are also SMEs that can assist security resources with maintaining and improving defenses, as this attack surface is constantly exposed 24/7, 365. Mobile device management, managing and supporting endpoint assets such as laptops, tablets, phones, the operating systems and applications used by these devices. They'll apply secure baseline configurations. And again, these SMEs can assist security resources with this particular attack surface as it's continually evolving. Application development, designs, codes, and deploys server-side applications, creates and maintains software bills of materials. These SBOMs will help accelerate analysis and ensure thorough auditing of all standard and custom software applications used throughout an organization. And vendor management manages relationships with service and product suppliers, ensuring vendors are abiding by necessary protocols like GDPR, HIPAA, etc., while auditing vendors' privileged access to systems, networks, and applications. Information security. These stakeholders typically would involve teams doing security monitoring, incident response, penetration testing, threat intelligence, application security, GRC, security architecture and engineering. Security monitoring, you may have a team working with a SIM or a fully staffed SOC, maybe doing data loss prevention or extended detection and response. Incident response could be a CSIRT, EDR. Penetration testing may be doing attack surface management, breach simulation, adversarial testing. Threat intelligence could include brand surveillance, threat modeling, threat research, and vulnerability testing and research. GRC may be involved with vendor management, policy management, and exception management. Network security is typically involved with perimeter security, VPNs, IDS, IPS, content filtering, implementation of alternate mitigation strategies. In application security, would be dealing with SaaS, DAS, SecDevOps, secure coding practices, and creating SBOMs. All these teams may benefit from and gain insight regarding vulnerability, report data trending, as well as provide input into the vulnerability management and remediation teams for assistance with remediation of vulnerabilities discovered, as well as discovering those vulnerabilities. But let's not forget security architecture and engineering. This team often is tasked with designing and creating interoperability, as along with information sharing between these security systems, data resources, and these teams. Now that you have a better understanding of potential teams involved, you may be asking, how do I find and work with these key stakeholders? When building a vulnerability management and remediation program, we believe that stakeholder participation is a must for creating cohesion while improving collaboration among all stakeholders involved. Successful vulnerability management and remediation truly requires supportive participation from multiple teams within an organization. Over the next few slides, we will talk through a few of the questions we typically ask our clients when creating and developing a vulnerability management and remediation program. Identify stakeholders and asset owners. Typically, we'll ask, are roles and responsibilities defined and memorialized within any existing standards or policies? Who maintains your one true source for the most current and accurate asset information? Does that asset inventory have asset owners, teams assigned for each asset category or tag? Identifying the asset's owner, often the team frequently utilizing the endpoint or application, is essential to ensuring business impact is minimized or avoided, as well as having an ally ensure the asset receives frequent vendor updates. Assign roles and responsibilities. Does a runbook exist describing the vulnerability management process and procedures? Does a RACI exist defining roles and responsibilities? Who is responsible for discovering and identifying assets, software, or web applications? Who is responsible for reviewing and maintaining scope? Steps that are missing in assigning are easily forgotten or neglected, which commonly leads to failures within processes and/or potentially a critical failure of the overall program. Coordinate efforts. How are assets discovered within the environment? Who owns the decision for what is in scope versus out of scope? How is something added to scope or removed from scope? What approvals are required to adjust scope? Helping to reset and define appropriate expectations is essential to creating cohesive interoperability between teams with competing priorities. Communicate progress regularly. How frequently are scans performed and findings communicated? Are scan and change window calendars published and accessible by all? Who performs reviews and maintains vulnerability scans? How are findings communicated, validated, and escalated? How are false positives handled? Communication and transparency are key tenets to every successful relationship. The first step required for resolving any problem is to first admit there is an issue. Create accountability. Who creates and maintains tagging strategy? How is criticality defined and measured? Who ensures scope or tagging is maintained and applied to respective tools or platforms? Who creates, validates, and tests backups for tools or platforms? Who approves, handles, and tracks exceptions? Who is responsible for updating or patching assets? Keeping each other accountable will drive success, but requires supportive encouragement. Discuss successes and lessons learned. How are remediation efforts validated and reported? What alternative mitigations are available? What are our options when remediation cannot be performed? What additional security controls are being used for mitigation? Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it, said Winston Churchill. So do not be afraid to call out things that did not work, but try to approach your colleagues with constructive criticism. At the same time, be sure to balance the negative by celebrating successes with everyone involved. If you have any questions or wish to discuss vulnerability management and remediation, please feel free to reach out to me via Discord. My handle is dave.wilson. Have a great day.